Supertrainer or Supershoe, or maybe both. Which one is the right one for you? Today we're breaking down the Asics Superblast 2 versus the Asics Metaspeed Sky Paris. What's up everybody, I'm Eric McIntyre, aka Rad Dad Bod, and you're watching Rad Dad Bod TV, where we review running shoes. Today, like I said, we're comparing the Superblast 2 with the Metaspeed Sky Paris, and if it's your first time watching one of my videos, you may notice some timestamps below. Feel free to jump around to the various parts of the review, but if you do so, I would sure appreciate if you come back and watch the full video when you get a sec, as I put a lot of time and effort into these. And if you've been a viewer for a while, but you haven't yet hit that subscribe button, please consider doing so today and turning on notifications so you get notified every time I drop a new video. Now, just to kick us off, some quick disclaimers and disclosures are that I actually purchased both of these shoes with my own money. That being said, I have received shoes from Asics before in the past. Whenever I receive shoes, I'm not paid, I'm not obligated or asked to create any specific content. No one watches my content beforehand, and all thoughts are entirely my own. With that out of the way, let's talk about the intended use of these two shoes. Now, the Supershoe is going to be a little bit more obvious, so the Metaspeed Sky Paris is really going to be kind of that marathon racing shoe. It's meant for peak performance, it's meant to go 26.2 miles, and as with most super shoes, you can also race down in the shoe. Really, it's meant to go fast. As for the Superblast 2, it's really going to be kind of one of your marathon training options, so it's meant to handle a lot of the bulk training of marathon training, and in my mind, I feel like the Superblast is really built for those like long marathon training runs. As such, that's how we're going to be evaluating these two shoes in this comparison. Now, from a price standpoint, the Superblast comes in at $200, which is on the steeper end for a Supertrainer, especially because it's non-plated, and we'll talk a little bit about the midsole construction and whatnot here in a second. And then the Metaspeed Sky Paris is going to be $250, which nowadays is starting to become a little bit cheaper for a super shoe. Asics actually just announced the Metaspeed Sky and Edge Tokyo, as well as the Metaspeed Ray. So we'll see, I can't remember what the price point is for those, but those drop in July, and I do think that the price point is going up across all three. Now, from a specs perspective, the Superblast comes in at 8.8 ounces, which is 249 grams, and then the Metaspeed Sky Paris comes in at 6.5 ounces, which is 184 grams. So at least upon release, that was one of the lighter overall super shoes on the market. And then from a Supertrainer perspective, 8.8 is not necessarily just light, but for a Supertrainer, it is on the lighter side. So a lot of them, because they have plates or different foams, kind of dual density foams, things along those lines, they tend to be a little bit heavier, especially in this like max stack category. But the Superblast is surprisingly light for how tall it is. Speaking of that height, the Superblast has 46 in the heel, 38 in the forefoot for an 8mm heel to toe drop. Meanwhile, the Metaspeed Sky Paris is 39.5 in the heel, 34.5 in the forefoot for a 5mm heel to toe drop. Now, from a fit perspective, the Superblast is narrow in the heel. It has a mid to narrow midfoot. I would say actually more of a standard midfoot overall, and then kind of more of a standard normal toe box. From a length perspective, I do feel like it fits true to size. The Metaspeed Sky Paris, on the other hand, has a narrow midfoot, and I do believe that is a little bit more narrow or true narrow. The heel, I would say, is fairly standard for the most part, and then you have like an actually pretty wide breathable toe box. As far as length, I would also say it goes true to size. So I am a 10.5 in both of these shoes, and I do believe that that was the correct size for me. Moving to the uppers, there's a couple of key differences. So with the Superblast, you have a engineered mesh, and it is going to be fairly breathable overall, but not like the most breathable shoe out there. The engineered mesh is very comfortable, and then from a tongue perspective, you do have a fully gusseted tongue, and then just, you know, a little bit of light cushion there in the heel and just like the ankle area right there. So the Superblast is not meant for racing, so it is a little bit more of a traditional structured upper. It is not as warm. It looks a lot like the novablast, obviously, so it's not quite as warm and plush as the novablast in the upper, but all in all, it's a similar overall experience. I find it to be really nice, and frankly, I do still feel like it's breathable enough to race in if you choose so. The Metaspeed Sky Paris, on the other hand, has a motion wrap upper, which is this breathable, I don't know if you would call it mesh, but I would say probably mesh. So it has kind of that breathable mesh right there. You can see through the shoe pretty good if you get close to it. And then from the tongue, it is not fully gusseted. In fact, it's not gusseted at all, but honestly, it still has pretty good lockdown for the most part. Now, the upper does fit, to me, a little bit baggy. So not necessarily like the widest shoe in the world, but still kind of enough that you have a little bit of extra material, I think. And for a race shoe, I like the breathability, but I maybe would have liked a little bit more of a streamlined fit. I have heard that in the Tokyo editions, that fit does improve a little bit, so we'll kind of see what that looks like. The shoe also does have a little bit of cushion there in the heel, but nothing really. You're really just trying to save weight overall throughout the shoe, which is kind of nice. And then you do have some of those kind of performance laces, which I'm a big fan of. Honestly, I think all faster overall shoes or more premium overall shoes should have laces like these. Now with the Metaspeed Sky, I did end up having a little bit of shifting around in the shoe, so you can sure get like some good fit. But again, like I said, it is a little bit baggy, and I would have liked to see at least maybe a fully gusseted tongue, but I get it. They're trying to save weight wherever they can. Moving to the midsole, the Superblast has a dual layer midsole, so you have the FF Turbo Plus up top, which is the premium like PEBA based foam. And then you have FF Blast Eco on the bottom, which is going to be kind of a recycled version, or like has like 24% recycled material. And that's going to be a little bit firmer, a little bit denser foam to give the shoe a little bit more structure. Now the FF Turbo Plus to me in the Superblast is going to be very, very bouncy, very, very responsive. It's not overly squishy though. And so it does compress a little bit, but I think some people may find it to be a little bit firm. Because there's so much of it too, I mean, you can go ahead and bend the shoe, but it's a little bit harder to bend despite not having a plate in the shoe itself, just because of that thick slab of foam. Now for me, this shoe was very, very stable, or is very, very stable overall, because you do have some pretty good structure, and then it's an overall wider base for the most part. And so I find it to be a really, really good balance of like enough cushion underfoot to where you could go easy in it, where you can go long in it, where you can kind of slow down in it and not worry about the joints getting beat up. But it's also fast enough that honestly, like when I put this shoe on, I find myself wanting to speed up overall. Full disclosure, this was my favorite shoe of 2024, and I've been putting some extra miles on it lately as I burn through a lot of the shoes that I've needed to put miles on for review. And so I'm going back to it, and I love it as much as when I initially tested it. Now the Metaspeed Sky Paris still has the FF Turbo Plus, and then you have a carbon fiber plate that runs through the shoe. As such, it's going to be a little bit more rigid than the Superblast. And the foam I find to be not necessarily firmer. I think it's about the same firmness overall, but having that plate running through the shoe does give you a little bit more of a snappy overall experience. What I found with this shoe though is, you know, if you look at the base, you can see that it's almost like spoon shaped. So it's kind of narrow here in the midfoot, you know, it's a little bit wider here out in the heel, but then you have most of the surface area there kind of in that forefoot and toe area. And so for me, the Metaspeed Sky Paris was a little bit unstable. I did find myself kind of over pronating a little bit more than I normally would in a shoe. And it still though is going to be pretty supportive underfoot. It's similar to me, it feels similar to like the Alpha Fly. It's a little bit punchy. You're gonna more pop off the ground. It's not really like a smooth ride to me, but it gives you a lot of feedback, a lot of responsiveness, and it's a lot of fun in a shoe. I don't think it's gonna be more pace versatile. I think that the Superblast is obviously going to be a little bit more forgiving, and that's, you know, kind of a given the use case of the two shoes. With that in mind, I do think the Metaspeed Sky Paris more like biases faster runners overall. Typically, if you see someone wearing the shoe in a race, they are someone who is very, very fast, versus you're probably gonna, like when you go to middle of the pack, back of the pack, for those who are still using super shoes though, I don't feel like you see these shoes quite as much. I feel like you're finding people wearing either more like softer foams overall or more stable overall shoes, even if they are super shoes. From an outsole perspective, I think they both use Asics grip, but the outsole pattern is going to be a little bit different. The Asics grip on the Superblast I had no issues with. I know a lot of people have had issues with the novablast though, with the Harlow rubber. Neither of them gave me any concern, so just because I haven't had any issues doesn't mean that you're not necessarily going to have any issues, but I do feel like the Superblast grip is better than the novablast grip. Not by like a ton, but it is better overall. Meanwhile, the Asics grip on the Metaspeed Sky Paris, I had no issues with either. You know, I've run on the track, I've run on the roads, and that's about it in these shoes. And so I'm not overly concerned with the grip on these, but let me know in the comments if you did have issues with either of these, just so some other people can kind of see that and make that decision for themselves, obviously. Now, as far as my pick between the two, you know, I have to go Superblast too, but there is some nuance to this question, right? Like, I do think both of these shoes, I don't think people are necessarily going to have to pick between these two shoes. I think that these two work in a rotation together. They're complementary of each other. You know, the Superblast can be kind of your long run, your marathon workout shoe. It can be your tempo shoe. It can be your easy day, your recovery day, your standard mile shoe. It can be a little bit of everything. But where it kind of comes up short is in those shorter, faster intervals. And that's where the Metaspeed Sky Paris is obviously going to shine. The other thing is if you are a fast marathoner and you're really trying to stay nimble, save weight, really get the biggest amount of energy return possible, then the Metaspeed Sky Paris is going to be that shoe for you in the marathon distance or even other races. For me though, I really like, just because comfort is such a big thing over the marathon distance, honestly, I might go Superblast on the marathon instead of the Metaspeed Sky Paris. And I know that's maybe a hot take because this is a really, really good shoe. It was ranked very, very highly for me in terms of super shoes last year. But it just from the marathon distance, you know, if I just want comfort, if I want to make sure that I'm most comfortable on the last mile, not necessarily just the fastest on the first mile, that's where the Superblast is going to shine for me. But you can't go wrong with either of these. It's really going to come down to more preference. But the Superblast 2 is just going to be a lot more versatile as well. It's funny, people are using it as a daily trainer. And frankly, you guys are just spoiling yourselves if that's the case. No other shoes are going to feel good after you do that as your daily running shoe. So like this year, all of my top choices so far have all kind of been similar to the Superblast in comparison, right? It's like I'm saying it's like a Superblast Light, whether that's the Neo Zen, the Aeroglide 3, those feel like Superblast Lights to me. So, you know, I absolutely love this shoe. I really, really like this shoe. Absolutely love this shoe. So just some final thoughts. I mean, honestly, like I said, you can't go wrong with these two. I'm super, super excited to be able to try what Asics is putting out this year. Not just the 3 super shoes that they just announced that are launching in July, but also the other shoes that are still coming. Like they've got a lot on their docket. I can't remember what's embargoed and what's not, so I'm not going to mention anything by name, but like Asics is pulling out all the stops for 2025, and I can't wait to see how a lot of these updates and new shoes feel on foot. You know, and then there's obviously going to be most likely a novablast 6 released at the end of the year. Novablast series is always well loved. I fully expect to enjoy that shoe as well. Asics at this point is just a brand that for the most part, no matter which shoe you choose, there's a very high likelihood that you're gonna like it. Obviously, there's going to be nuances though due to drop and firmness and whatever. So you still want to look for your preferences, but Asics is putting out some very, very high quality products. Now, if you stuck around this far, I sure appreciate you. Please take a sec, leave a comment, let me know what you enjoyed or what I could be doing better in this video. If you've got other comparisons that you'd like to see, this was actually one that I wasn't going to do and was requested in my comment section. So I do read every comment. Thank you to whoever suggested it. I can't remember who it was, but I hope that this was informative. So let me know down below if there's more that you guys would like to see. And if you stuck around this far and you still haven't hit that subscribe button, please consider doing so and turning on your notifications so you get notified every time I drop a new video. And just to wrap up, I'll leave you with a question as always, which is what was the last shoe that you wore in a marathon? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks everybody.